Hey. For any of the music people, I didn't want to leave you hanging on that unresolved note, so sorry about that. Hi, welcome. Hello, thank you. It's so nice to see a room full of people who are here to learn and to talk to each other and to collaborate and to eat lunch in your laps. Hi, I'm Holly Gordon. I go by she, her pronouns, and I'm the Community Engagement Manager here at PlanRVA. And it is my great pleasure to welcome you to our second annual PlanRVA Day. So I want to start by, I want to start by thanking our sponsors for the day, Virginia Housing, the Timmons Group, and the Hodges Partnership. Thank you for helping us financially make this happen. We have a ton of other good collaborators here from other nonprofits, both locally and across the state, and even as far as DC. You'll get to hear from some of those folks today if you come for the whole day. But this is our first session, which is media and public engagement. And so I want to just start by telling you a little bit about PlanRVA. So raise your hand if you've ever heard of PlanRVA before today. That's a good sign. Okay, good. Raise your hand if this is your first time in this space. All right, yeah, good stuff, yay. I like it, thank you. So PlanRVA, as you might know, we promote regional cooperation and collaboration across all of the 9 localities in the region. So we work primarily in 4 areas of expertise: transportation, emergency management, the environment, and community development. And so we are where the region comes together to look ahead. And where PlanRVA Day came from was the idea that we realized we work very deeply with some of you on some things, but there were people that said, hey, we don't realize all of the other wonderful work that you're doing. And so this day came out of, let's highlight some of the more, perhaps get a chance to do a little more in depth about some of the work that we're doing. And so we have 3 panels today. We have media and public engagement, we have data-driven decision-making, and we have a housing panel. And so hopefully somewhere in there you'll find a little bit of information that you didn't know before you came today. I'm going to turn it over to Cameron McPherson from the Hodges Partnership, who's going to tee up our panel for today.
Thanks, Holly. Good afternoon and happy PlanRVA Day to everyone. I'm excited to be here to learn, connect, and collaborate with everyone. I'm Cameron McPherson, he, him pronouns, with the Hodges Partnership, a strategic communications firm in Richmond, Virginia. We are proud to partner with PlanRVA throughout the year to support their communications team and are thrilled to sponsor today's media panel session. Quality journalism is vital to our democracy, civic engagement, and community pride. One of the reasons why I love to read, watch, and listen to our local news is that it gives us an opportunity to learn about the people and organizations making a difference in the Richmond region. Many of you are in the room today, so thank you for your work. The news industry has experienced massive changes over the last 2 decades, both nationally and locally. The way we consume news and share the news is shifting. There's new news outlets while others have closed, and there's new newsroom models being introduced. While change will inevitably continue, I know this, that journalism has never been more important as we work to inform and engage the community. I'm thankful for the many talented reporters and news outlets in our community, and today we get to talk with some of them. Today's discussion will highlight how local journalists report on local news, connect with local audiences, and more. So let me introduce today's panel. We've got Craig Belcher. He is the new managing editor of the Richmond Free Press. A native of Richmond, Craig started his journalism career at the Caroline Progress, a weekly publication that closed in 2018. He went on to become the online editor of Style Weekly and later served as the arts and entertainment editor for Richmond Magazine. Michael Phillips is the founder of the upcoming Richmonder news outlet. After 16 years at the Richmond Times-Dispatch, including time as a sports reporter, sports editor, and senior editor, Michael is working to create the future of news at the Richmonder, a nonprofit local news site that aims to launch in fall of 2024. He also hosts a sports talk radio show at 910 The Fan and is a freelance writer in the Richmond area. Michael Schwartz is the editor of Richmond BizSense. Michael joined BizSense in 2010 after 5 years as a reporter at Inside Business in Hampton Roads. He covers banking, finance, lawsuits, and small businesses. BizSense publishes 4 to 6 news stories each weekday and regularly hosts events for the local business community. And we have Keyris Manzaneres, is a multimedia journalist with VPM. Keyris is a dynamic, bilingual, Emmy Award-winning reporter at VPM, Virginia's home for public media. Passionate about stories that impact underserved communities, she previously worked at ABC 8 News, where she created and anchored on RVA. I meant to check with you before this, but you can correct my pronunciation in a second. To inform Central Virginia's Latino community. She's covered major issues like health disparities, housing, education, immigration, COVID-19, and justice reform. Keyris was born and raised in Virginia. And last but not least, today's moderator, J. Elias O'Neill, Public Information Officer with Chesterfield County. You may have seen the news a few months ago that Chesterfield had its very own ice cream flavor with Gelati Celesti to celebrate the county's 275th anniversary. As we were preparing for this panel, I learned that Jay was the person behind the idea and the headlines. When he's not creating ice cream campaigns, Jay helps Chesterfield connect with residents through media relations and the county's many communications channels. He's a former reporter with Richmond BizSense and is a native of Texas. I'll hand it over to Jay, and thank you all for today's discussion.
Right, thank you, Cam. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this great panel of media and public engagement. We've got a great group of folks here with us. I'm, of course, J. Elias O'Neill. My pronouns are he, him. This is going to be very interesting considering that this is my former boss and somewhere around here is my other new boss for Chesterfield County, including our board supervisor, Jessica Schneider, who's here with us from the Cloverdale District. I think before we can even get started with opening up this panel, we should talk about the Richmond metro media market and kind of some of the things that have happened. I think if you've been here long enough, at least for the past 4 to 10 years, you've noticed significantly a number of changes in our market. We've seen publications fold, we've seen publications merge, we have seen publications be purchased. Same thing with broadcast organizations that have been purchased. We've seen old reporters with lots of experience retire or be let go in favor of younger and experienced reporters. And that has kind of created I like to call them opportunities, but I think for us in public relations, some challenges as well, because while all of these things are happening in the Metro Richmond market, we're growing really fast in Metro Richmond. And a number of our populations, our demographic populations, I should say, are growing along with them, particularly our Spanish-speaking population. Just a fun factoid out there, 40% of Metro Richmond's Spanish-speaking population lives in Chesterfield County. Did you know that? Yes. 40% of the population for the Metro Spanish speakers live in Chesterfield County, and that has presented us with some opportunities and some challenges as well, and that also is reflected with some of the things that your organizations and governments do, as well as what these folks up here do to inform the public as well. So to get started, I want everyone on this panel to kind of talk a little bit about what their outlet is and obviously some of the news that you cover. I'm gonna start with Michael. Obviously I'm gonna pick on him because he was my former editor. But I'm gonna start with Michael first and then we're gonna move on down to Craig.
All right, hi. I can go with that. That's Craig's. I think it's perfect. Can you hear me? No? All right. How about now? Okay. All right, sorry about that. So I'm the editor of Richmond BizSense. So maybe just so I know who I'm working with, by a show of hands, who has heard of Richmond BizSense? How many of you read Richmond BizSense regularly? All right, good, so it's a friendly audience, that's good. How many of you subscribe to and receive our morning email that comes out Monday through Friday at 7? Great, thank you for that, and thank you for reading. So we're the business journal for the Richmond region. been around for 17 years now, so it was launched in 2008 by a gentleman named Aaron Kramer, who's somewhere in this room. The story is he was, not unlike your story, I suppose, a reporter at the Times Dispatch, a business reporter there, and saw an opening to do local business news in a better, faster way. And so he set out to do it, and here we are all these years later. I joined BizSense in 2010. I'd been an obituary writer at the Virginia Pilot in my hometown, and then I became a business reporter down there, and came up here and then been editing there since. We actually have a sister website in Denver, Colorado. Same business model. If you look at the website, it looks just like ours. Aaron went out to run that, and I run the newsroom here in Richmond now. So our goal every day, we publish Monday through Friday, is to be the business journal for the region, and to basically inform the local business community on everything that's happening that we think is of interest. There's a couple of ways that media covers business. There's sort of the consumery kind of business side of like, here's the latest, Apple's announced the latest features to the iPhone. That's not what we do. We do kind of business to business news. So what is, when we're writing about, say, a commercial real estate project, we're heavy on real estate. We don't write about that just to advertise what a developer is doing. We write about it to say, what does the banker want to know? If you're a banker in town, you want to know who's funding that project, and if your bank is doing, or if your competitors do, what does the lawyer want to know? So we sort of put our feet in the shoes of all the different types of business people that are in the region and say, what do all these people want to know? And that's what we report. Real estate news is interesting and important. Number one, it moves a lot of money. It's a big industry here, but ultimately it touches everyone because it's sort of the built environment that we live in. Like, I'm certain we got the scoop on this building that we're sitting in now when it was first being proposed. And I know we got the scoop on who the anchor tenant in this building was. But all of that is about the built environment. And so that's why real estate news is interesting, and that's kind of become our bread and butter over the years. And then as we've grown and as the local media landscape has changed, we've found some openings here and there to change what we do and do some new things. While always keeping our eye on the prize of business news, we've moved more into covering local government, not politics, but government. So the kind of the business of local government. So we're at all the meetings, or at least tuning in on streaming at most of the meetings, and looking for that intersection of business and how government affects the business community. So whether it's making a ruling about the Diamond District or a new transportation project, like we just covered the Powhite Parkway extension in Chesterfield, things like that. So it touches business, because if you're a general contractor, you want to know when the county's going to award that massive contract for the Powhite extension. But if you're a resident, you also want to know when that's happening too. So that's a good little intersection, and that's one of the ways we've evolved over the years as certain publications in town have been diminished staffing-wise, and Chesterfield Observer is folded, things like that. So. And then the other thing we do in addition to the news is we host a lot of business networking events. So about one a month or so, all different types of formats. We do a lot of panel discussions. We do something called a hard hat happy hour, which is fun. We have one later this month. And that's a way for us to get our name out there, to shine a light on some of the people that you guys read about in our publication every day, and the places that you read about, you get to see it. See a building coming to life, meet the developer behind a building, et cetera, et cetera. I can just say real quick, we're a for-profit business model, because I know we're going to get into talking about business models a little bit. For-profit business model, if you get our morning email, it's packed with ads. That's our biggest source of revenue. But we have ads on our website, we have sponsorships to our events, and we have a paywall, partial paywall, that is also evolving. You may have read about some of that last week. And that's based on our business model. We have a staff of 6 here in Richmond. So I'm the editor, but I'm also still a reporter. Jay knows how we operate. We grind it out Monday through Friday on a daily deadline, but we have some of the hardest working reporters in Richmond. I was telling these guys, we have arguably maybe one of the more seasoned newsrooms in Richmond now. We have, I've been here almost 15 years. Our least seasoned guy's been here for almost 5 years now. So, and in my mind, I'm biased, but I can see the difference in the depth and breadth of our coverage and just the institutional knowledge that our guys have. And that's what, you mentioned that earlier, long-time reporters getting laid off or whatever. That's what gets lost over time, and readers maybe don't notice it right away, but it is noticeable over time. So that's a quick summary. Here, I'll hold all the broken mics.
So I'm Keyris. Yes. I'm Keyris with BPM. We're Virginia's home for public media. We are an NPR and PBS affiliate, and we're also a nonprofit, which I think makes us really special, in my opinion. We serve nearly 2 million people across central Virginia and the Shenandoah Valley. So we cover a big part of Virginia, so our coverage is very expansive. But we do have a newsroom in Richmond, which is BPM News. And we don't have a paywall, but we are donor funded. So we do have, I think, in my opinion, in the time where it does seem like a lot of newsrooms are shrinking, it does seem like ours is growing. We have multiple different avenues to produce news. So we have podcasting, we have television, we have radio, digital, web. So really, I think we're positioned in an advantage because we have multiple ways to get information out and also to interview people. Sometimes people are not that comfortable being interviewed for TV, but it can make for a good radio story. So there's different ways to get the news out. For the last 3 years, I've been on a show called Focal Point. We were a statewide show that covered a range of topics from housing to health disparities to race. But we've been shifting our ideas and our mindset to be more digital focused and have a stronger web presence. So really still producing, I guess, what you would call a traditional TV package. My background is in broadcast journalism, but more for a web and social audience. So BPM is really growing. We're moving downtown as well. And so I think that's gonna really open up an opportunity for more community engagement, to be able to meet people face to face and have people come to our offices for interviews and for community events, which I think is important.
Time to play roulette. This is number 4. You number 4? Oh.
Yeah,
We did it. Don, I think I'm good, right?
Yeah.
Y'all hear me? All right. Well, my outlet is different than their outlets in that we don't exist. There's an obstacle to putting the news out each day. We'll be public facing in a week and a half, and then we launch on September 9th. Cardinal News, some of you guys know in Roanoke, is our business model. Essentially, we're everything Richmond, by Richmond, for Richmond. Journalism as philanthropy is kind of a new concept, and it's starting to grow. This year's Pulitzers, 4 of the 11 winners were nonprofit news outlets, and obviously our friends at BPM are familiar with that as well. But this notion of, for a long time, the newspaper had reporters staff that, but the money came from classified ads and movie listings and all these other things that are not revenue streams anymore. And so when it came time to reinvent, we see a future of saying to people, the news is worth paying for, and good local news and accountability journalism is worth paying for. And that means experienced people going to city council meetings, going to school board meetings, providing that plumbing that the rest of the media relies on for basic information about what's happening in this town. And so we're lining up a team to do that. I'm really excited about everything that's cooking. I'll talk all day about it. I've got paperwork I could send y'all home with about it too. But I'm very excited about where we're headed and the chance to present a news outlet that's truly just devoted to Richmond and its issues. We won't go to the General Assembly, we don't go on statewide issues, but just providing basic accountability and bringing the community together in Richmond is one of our core focuses, is saying, can we tell the stories that are going untold right now in our community, the people you need to meet, the people you want to know that are doing cool things. And so I'm very excited about that and excited to talk to you guys about how we make those stories happen.
Thank you. Well, we give the news away. I'm the managing editor of the Richmond Free Press. You wanna heard of that newspaper?
Yeah.
Okay. I won't talk too long, I've only been there about a month and a half. Been around about 32 years, have a staff of about 12 people. We cover issues, events, any matters that relate to the Black community here in Richmond.
All right.
You're on.
Is it on?
What number?
9, channel 9?
On the tape.
3, sorry. There's 3 numbers on the thing.
All right, here we go. Okay, Thank you. All right, now we got the technical difficulties here. So let's talk about how you all operate. You know, like how do you pick stories? How do you cover stories? Like what's the process? Craig, I'm gonna start with you and then we'll work our way down.
Well, we have young staff reporters like we just talked about. We have reporters that don't have a lot of experience, that are just starting to build their beat. You know, the best way, you know, I tell them to get stories is to build relationships with the people that you talk to, the people that are the gatekeepers of the people you need to talk to. I mean, to be polite, you need to be friendly, and almost be their friend, and just try to get the information you need that way. One of the things they don't teach you in journalism school is the importance of building relationships.
Right.
A lot of these kids come out, they're ready, they're looking for the press release, or looking for someone to send them some quotes, and they're so ready to tell a story, but not to build their own stories.
All right. Go ahead. You wanna go ahead?
Yeah, and you know, in my time at the newspaper, the number one question we get, why didn't you cover this story? And the number one answer we would give was, because we didn't know about it, right? And so that's where y'all come in and you know, providing a lot of times the press release can be seen as, you know, just a short little piece of information is what we're looking for. We're not looking for you to write the story for us, but just to let us know this cool thing is happening, this person's doing something good, and you know, we're only as good as our readers, right? Because our readers call attention to, hey, y'all need to get down, this person's doing a really cool thing in the Manchester neighborhood. You know, what's this building? What's this big hole in the ground, right? That's how so many business stories start with, you know, what is happening in my neighborhood? And so from a press release notification standpoint, I don't need anything crazy elaborate. I don't need, you know, the big, you know, essay, 500-word essay, just the, you know, the 5 W's, who, what, when, where, why. Just hit those, let us know what's going on, and a lot of times that's where the kernel of the story can start to develop.
Interesting. Are we curious?
Yes, I'm number one, actually, never mind, it's all. I approach it in a way where I like to find the person first. I think that starting with someone who's being personally affected by an issue or by something that's happening in their community, I think is the most important way to have people who aren't experiencing that be able to connect with them and fully understand what's going on in their community. So that really is my approach, I think, when going about creating and telling a story. My medium is TV focused. Web and radio are also a component, but TV really is my background. So when I say that, more of a news package. However, when you tune into local outlets, the packages are very short, right? 2 minutes, maybe 1:30. My packages range from 4 minutes to 8 minutes. So it's a longer form of storytelling. You have the opportunity to bring in multiple voices to really contextualize what's happening. So those stories take time. And a lot of resource and trust building with people. I also focus a lot on the Latino community in Virginia and in Richmond and Chesterfield. And if they don't trust you, they're not gonna talk to you, right? And so part of that is being able to show that you understand their culture, that you respect their language, respect their perspective, and will share it in an authentic way. So I think for me, a lot of source building and story building really gets to the heart of just having conversations and communication with people. I've been now in the Richmond area for about 7 years as a reporter, so I feel like, you know, my Facebook DM is like flooded. My Facebook is like no longer personal because I feel like people are always sending stuff to my inbox, and so just trying to reach people in different ways I think is important. WhatsApp is very relevant in the Hispanic community, so being on WhatsApp, having a Facebook presence, a Twitter presence, I think that really helps to people know that you're accessible and are willing to listen.
So, number 2, let's fire this thing up. Hello? No? Okay. All right. So, we're sort of old school, and we kind of try to do as best we can old-fashioned shoe leather reporting. So we I kind of always say we rely on paper and people to find everything we do for the most part. So paper, documents, public filings, building permits, SEC filings, what have you, court filings. Our lead story today was about some people suing each other. That happens more often in business than most people like to admit. And to a room of PR people, you may not want to hear, but we at BizSense pride ourselves on not relying on press releases at all if we can help it, and that's not because we don't like PR firms or anything like that. Cameron, no offense. But what we believe is that the news is most valuable when the reader can get it early on in the process. So again, to use this building as an example, when we found out, or if we found out that Lynx Ventures, who owns this building, we got word that they're buying this site or they're planning something huge for this site. If we can report that, even if we don't know the whole story right away, again, if you're an engineer or an architect or a construction company, you want to know something as big is coming to this site. If you're a lawyer, you want to call those guys and be like, hey, I'll help you with the entitlement process going through city council. So that's our reasoning for trying to get on things as early as possible. And often that is pre-press release kind of stuff. And so over the years, we've gotten really good at that. We've gotten really good at finding those things, finding those documents, and getting people to trust us to say, okay, I really don't want you, like the developer doesn't always love when we call them to say, hey, we found this little nugget, you gotta tell us what's happening, we're gonna write it with or without you. They don't always love it, but we've gotten good over the years of showing them that we're a trustworthy news source, and we're gonna write it down the middle, and we're not gonna say, there's people in the neighborhood who aren't happy about more construction right out of the gate, because let's face it, it's Richmond. There's always someone unhappy about something new. So that's not always the focus of our coverage, and some publications skew the other way. So we've built the trust that way, and then from that, that's where the people come in. We have the bulk of our stories, our best stories come from tips that we just get from readers, and it's a miracle that happens. Like, to me, it's still, we've been doing this for so long, but it is still a miracle that someone in this room sees something and says, I'm gonna reach out to my favorite BizSense reporter. Like, that's a freaking miracle that happens, seriously. And that's where our best stories come from, and it's a beautiful thing, and that's written, and we just sort of grind it out day to day.
Can I build on that for a second? Because I do think journalists are at their best when they communicate, not when they need something, but to communicate, right? You're reaching out to people and you're reaching out to sources all the time, not just, hey, I need a quote from you, hey, I need a story from you, what's up with this, but also just checking in. And those conversations can help build the trust and help know what's going on. I remember back when you had to pay by the text for text messages, the Verizon lady told me I texted more than most teenage girls who came into the store, which I took as a great compliment, obviously. But it's about how do you touch base with people all the time, and you mentioned that, right? You're not gonna build the trust of the community if you go down there and say, what's up with this thing? You've gotta be there day in, day out when there's not a story or a deadline on the line.
Yeah, we drill it in, we call it source work. We drill it in to our guys from day one, whether they're younger or seasoned, whatever. Go work sources, and oftentimes, Aaron and I talk about this all the time when we have a young reporter, we say, go work sources. They look at you like you've just said something for them. They don't know what that even means. And it's because Craig said it. That's the one thing you don't learn in journalism school, is like, how do you work a source? How do you build a rapport? How do you get someone who's, in our case, like, I'm talking to a Fortune 500 CEO, he might say, why is this schleppy little reporter calling me? Like, he's not even in the same realm as me. But you have to get past all that and say, I'm a dude trying to do my job the same as you, just maybe your pants are fancier than mine, whatever. And you have to get past that. You have to have confidence and say, if I want to make a living as a reporter, you have to talk to people. And the newer generation coming out.
I hate calling people.
Yeah. I mean, we do a summer internship every year, and we do it through the Dow Jones News Fund, which is a great program. They have it's business news focus, excuse me. But some of these kids, every now and then, that we'll get in the summer, they don't know how to communicate. They are afraid to call people on the phone and cold call them. They're like, you mean I can't text this person or DM them? And no, you're gonna cold call them on the phone, you're gonna do it in the newsroom, in the bullpen area, and some of us might even be listening to you, and your boss, your editor, because I'm right there with them. You have to get over that crap, and it's not so easy all the time. And it's kind of a lost art, I guess. I have a feeling you'll instill that in your people, yeah.
And I think that can be translated over into public relations, right? I know I find myself calling reporters on my own saying, hey, did you get a chance to look at the Board of Supervisors meeting? Do you have any questions? You know, did you get my press release? Did you have any questions? Would you like to interview some folks? And, you know, it's surprising, you know, even with some of the beat reporters that are assigned to our area, that they'll say no, or, you know, I can text you, or you can just send me the audio or something to that extent, and you have to respect it. So very interesting perspective. It kind of works both ways. I want to jump in a little bit about kind of diversity, because we talked about earlier how we have such a growing population and diverse population in Chesterfield. So I'm going to aim this question at Keyris. How important is it to get diverse perspectives in stories and storytelling, especially now?
I think it's super important, but I think when I think of diversity, I don't think just of race. I think about age groups, people, and just really different backgrounds, different perspectives, first generation, second generation, like that also has a way of bringing in a different perspective from someone different, right? So I really do think it's important. I mean, we're growing so much that we have to, I asked just recently, like, do we know how many of our radio listeners are bilingual, right? People who speak English and Spanish who might be interested in hearing small tidbits in Spanish that then can be heard in English, right? And so I think with a lot of the diversity focus there also needs to be an open mind for the people who consume traditional English-only news. Because I believe that more and more outlets will have some sort of Spanish language section. And hopefully it's not just translations, right? Hopefully it's original reporting that's contextualized, that's unique, that's original. Because that's really what the community wants, right? They don't want a translated thing. But I also think that a lot of, on the other side, right? Just recently, the Virginia Dental Foundation had a mini Mission of Mercy, right? So these events are focused for people that don't have dental care, that can come and get an extraction, surgery. I mean, the event is like crazy. They have like the people just kind of laying, and you can see the dental appointment really, but it's free, right? And so last year when I went, I was surprised to see like the entire room was Latino people. And there wasn't a press release that went out in Spanish. There wasn't anything like that. Someone had translated it from a church and the word got out on Facebook, right? So how as organizations can we start thinking of creating messaging that's targeted to that community, right? Ads, press releases. So when I ask, hey, do you have this in Spanish? It's not a scramble for the organization to now have to pay someone and get a translation, and that's a whole entire process, right? So having that, already thinking of that and being intentional of how you can share your information with us as a way for us to amplify it.
Awesome, thank you, Keyris. We're gonna switch gears and we're gonna talk a little bit about working with the media, right? So obviously everyone here wants to get their information in front of the public. Because we obviously want to engage with that public, we want them to know what's happening in their community or what's happening with the particular organization that's doing something in or for that community. However, there have been some situations, and I think several of you all in government and some other nonprofits or other entities can recall or relate where you've had a reporter that you broke the information down to, you said X, Y, Z, solve Pythagorean theorem for this, and you've given them all of this great information and they choose to use something that's not so great. Or as we call it in the biz, getting burned by a particular reporter. So I'm gonna pose this question to Craig and I'm gonna pose this question to Michael Schwartz. I wanna know what you all are doing to work with folks like us and in the community in making sure that things are being covered properly, I should say, and also wanting to make sure that you are being as fully transparent to your public as well.
When you say burn, do you mean a story you didn't like, or the
That's a
story
good
went
point.
wrong,
We're getting it
or
wrong.
inaccurate?
We're talking about probably a mix. I know in our cases, I can't speak for everyone else, but I know in our cases, we've had situations where we weren't even called. And we had wrong information in stories, or someone was misquoted, or someone's name was spelled wrong, or they may have used somebody else's name in a piece that they didn't talk to, just very loose reporting. So that's kind of what we're talking about here.
Unfortunately, that does happen, especially with new reporters. So what I've had to do is just carefully vet, even before they start, who you're gonna talk to. And afterwards, where'd you get this quote from? It has to be attributed. And then, like someone else mentioned, a lot of them like to listen to live streams and recordings of the meetings. They're missing out on what's happening in the room. So it's good to have that context there, and we just have to be as accurate as you can.
Can I go before Michael, because I want to brag on him real quick, because one of the best things they have is tenured reporters, right? There are outlets in town that pay their reporters right out of school $38,000 a year, and they're here, and their goal is not to cover this community and ingratiate inside the community. It's how do I get to New York as quickly as possible? How do I get a big story, a big scoop, and get noticed? When you're in the community every day for 10 years, you can't burn your sources, you can't burn your bridges, because then you don't have a story to write the next day. And so I think that commitment, VPM shares that as well, and you guys do too, I know, that commitment to experienced Richmond knowledgeable reporters is so important.
Yeah, and I guess that related to your original question of how do we sort of work with PR folks, part of it is that we almost never quote a press release, verbatim. Like if we're working on a story about a company and they send us a press release to sort of summarize everything that's happening, it's obligatory that there's gonna be a quote in there from various people. But we almost never use that in the story because we wanna talk to that person ourselves. And often, those quotes weren't even spoken by that person or written by that person. It was written by, whether it's an internal or outside PR person. That's the way it goes, and we understand that. But we want to get more to, our readers, if I'm talking to a CEO, I'm just going to use CEO as an example, people want, if you're quoting that person directly, you can see more of their personality, and that's how you get to know people. And it's Richmond, you're like, well, maybe I know this guy, or I just like the sound of this guy, I like how he talks, he's a free thinker or whatever. So that's how it's not that we completely shun the press release, we're always going beyond the press release. I don't think this person's here, but I still won't use their name. But I remember years ago, it was a local PR person representing a startup, and we write about local startups that are launching and growing and doing things. And he sent us a press release about something, and whatever the press release was about, it wasn't all that interesting. We didn't think it was all that newsworthy, but we had sort of known of the company that hadn't written about it yet. So had one of our guys call the founder of this startup and wrote a very much a BizSense startup story that a lot of you have read. And the PR guy emails me angry saying, this was not what was in the press release. Because the story was more about the person, the founder, where the idea came from, what the company's doing, how you're growing, all that. It had, the press release, I don't even remember what the press release was about. And I had it out with him, and then, I don't know if I've talked to him since then or not, but I may have banned him, I'm not sure. But yeah, so that's how we work. So you said earlier, you don't need a really long, Michael, you said, we don't need a really long press release with the whole story. We don't want you to write the story for us. So the easiest way is, the who, what, when, where, why. How do I get in touch with this person? Make sure that person is willing to talk. Don't send a press release to a reporter for someone who's just doesn't even want to talk. And that happens sometimes where, especially with a bigger company. I can think of one that we wrote about recently where the PR people very much wanted this company to get this news out, but you could tell the CEO just couldn't care less, honestly. And that happens sometimes, but it doesn't make it easy.
Can I add to this?
Go for it, yeah.
I also think that as much as there is the responsibility on us, right, to get the story right, I think press releases and things that are happening in your community could also be targeting a reporter that you like, right? maybe you do your homework on, oh, I really like their reporting style. I think that, they're gonna do a great job covering this event or this particular story. I'm gonna send them the press release. I'm gonna send them a news tip, right? And so maybe it falls, I think I can understand everything that we're talking about because the station that I previously worked at was a commercial TV station, right? They're on a tight crunch. They're calling sources at 10 a.m. trying to meet a 5 p.m. deadline. There is so much pressure and often it can feel like very transactional, right? This person's only reaching out to me when they need something, right? But I think that that's where the relationship building can go a long way. But also just knowing the reporters in the area that you trust with your story, I think is also very important and something to remember when you want to get information out as well as an organization.
That's a really good point. So this is a curveball question. How do you all feel about exclusives?
I like them. I'm in favor.
Me too.
Go ahead.
I'll give an example. I just think building a relationship's the most important thing because you want people to trust you with putting out their news as well. So I used to cover the Washington Commanders, and you all know them by their former name, the Washington football team. They were gonna build a new stadium in Woodbridge, and so the PR team, we were gonna have the exclusive on it, and they called me that morning and said, look, Dan Snyder, the owner, said, you're not big enough, it has to be on SportsCenter. We have to give it to ESPN instead. And so look, this is mine, I can pitch a fit and get it. I said, let's figure out how we can make this work for everybody. And so they announced it on SportsCenter, and then we had the drawings first in the Times-Dispatch, the renderings and the pictures, which I thought was the part everybody wanted to see anyway. You want to see what's the new stadium gonna look like. So we kept that part, they carved it out. They were very grateful to me for working through that situation, right? You can speak to this, sometimes your bosses have different visions than you have of what a story is gonna look like. And so you are now the intermediary between your bosses and the reporter of figuring out where this thing's gonna land in the middle.
I'll just say, we do a lot of that kind of negotiation for an exclusive story here. There, like I said, we get in early a lot of the time, and so someone said, can you just hold off? And we'll say, we can hold off, but this can't go any, we don't want to see this story in any other publication, and there'll be some back and forth, and then sometimes it'll get to, well, we're gonna put out a press release, and we'll say, well, if you put out the press release, we're just not gonna cover it. And sometimes you have to play hardball like that. It's not always fun, but sometimes you have to. And sometimes it'll be, well, okay, what time is your story gonna publish? And we say, well, our newsletter goes out at 7 a.m. and can we blast the press release out sometime after that? Okay, fine. So that's the kind of stuff we'll sometimes have to go through with, whether it's the company itself or a PR firm.
We got egos. You give us an exclusive, you're gonna get more ride. I mean, that's how it works. Like, I'm not endorsing the practice, I'm just saying, if you have a story that it distinguishes your outlet from every other outlet in town, we're gonna play it higher on the page than that other story.
And I think it also kind of goes into understanding what that publication does as well. Like, it doesn't make sense for somebody to give BizSense an exclusive about let's say a diaper drag 5K or something to that extent, when that could go somewhere else, or that kind of thing. So I think that plays into it as well. That's really interesting. All right, moving on to some other things here. So Northwestern University had a study last year that came out about basically the state of newspapers and media in general. We are losing 2.5 newspapers a week. That's not a month, that's not 2 years, a week in this country. That's up from basically 2 a week in 2023, or 2022, sorry. Getting my years mixed up, I'm wishing the year would be over. But anyway, a lot of that has to do with obviously market challenges, advertising challenges. We've experienced that in Chesterfield County with the loss of the Chesterfield Observer publication in 2022. So I want to know from, and I'm going to pick on Craig and Michael Phillips here for this particular question. I want to know what you all are doing to prepare for a newsroom of the future. You know, Michael, you have a nonprofit. The Free Press is a different type of business model. So talk to us about what you all are doing to stay alive and to continue covering Metro Richmond.
I think our newspaper has been focused on staying alive and surviving. And they've managed to do that after the death of their founder about 10 years ago. For the future, I mean, the vision would be, to move everything online eventually. I mean, the sad fact is young people do not pick up newspapers. The idea of picking up a paper to find out what happened yesterday or last week that's just never gonna go over well. And the eyeballs are online. There's a new one called the Fredericksburg Free Press. And they have 3 or 4 reporters. I think it's a nonprofit. Everything's online. I mean, I'm really scared for newspapers. I mean, I think the Time-Dispatch mistakenly printed an announcement they'd be going to 6 days a week a few months ago. I mean, all the other papers have gone that route. I'm scared.
Yeah, and we shouldn't neglect as a community that you guys have survived. That's really one of the inspirational stories right now, not locally, but nationally, that you have managed to do that given the industry challenges. I think the first thing we gotta do is swallow our pride as journalists, right? That's a big part of this nonprofit thing. You look at the newspaper and the functions it provided have largely been solved for elsewhere, right? You used to tell you when the movies play. Well, there is not a lack of data about when movies play. People are finding, we used to tell you where to buy a used coffee table. People are still buying used coffee tables. Like, we are not essential to that process anymore. And so we swallow our pride and say, we used to think providing the news was the core function of the newspaper. Well, there were a lot of other functions as well, and time has moved on and people have figured that out. So that's a big part of this nonprofit business model that you're hearing. We're telling people, we're telling corporate sponsors, individual partners, foundations, I know VPM is foundation supported to a large degree, hey, you need to leave behind a better city than you found. And your contribution, you can't afford not to do this. We cite a study by the Brookings Institute that in a town that doesn't have a newspaper, they pay on average about $650,000 more every year in interest costs because there's more corruption, there's more everything. That's when you control for all the other variables. You can't afford for news not to exist. It's too important right now. And that's us swallowing our pride. We can't be all the president's men swaggering into the room. We run the place. We've got to acknowledge this is a public good and we have to start treating it as such. And I think that calls for a little humility on our end as well.
Absolutely. That's a very, very good perspective there. Another question for Craig, and this time Keyris. I want to know what is the best way, and I think people here want to know what are the best ways for us to get our information to you all so we can go out to the public. Like what are some best practices we can follow to ensure that information gets out there?
Do you want to go first? Okay, so I mean, one way to get me to respond to an email is to spell my name wrong. I usually email those people back within like 5 or 6 minutes. But outside of that, I really like pitches that respect what we try to do, that have a knowledge of what our paper does. I mean, every week I'm trying to solve a problem. How do I fill up this newspaper? If someone can come along and make me think that they're on my side and they're trying to help, they understand what I'm trying to do, then I'm more open to hear what they have to say. Or you just spell my name wrong.
I'll let it slide if they spell.
Good to know.
I think for me, I do think the pandemic really changed the way that we communicate and the way that we meet. I think, yes, the reporters too are on the end watching the streams or, wanting to get information via email and things like that. But also, I feel like we're not really meeting face to face. I think there was a time where I knew all the PIOs, their faces, right? And I think that's sort of changing as new people enter new roles and new journalists come in. But if, you're an organization and you see my work and you want to meet, I am always down to do that. I think that's the best type of relationship, and I'm more than likely to click on an email from Cameron because I know him and we've met and I recognize his name. So having that I think really makes a difference, being able to say, okay, this is what they're about, this is what I'm about, and having that understanding can be beneficial. And then also, my own personal request is just provide information in other languages as well, even if it's not the entire press release, but if it's a flyer, if it's an event that you want coverage of or you want people to attend, I think there needs to be that thinking too of who's your audience, right, when you reach out to reporters as well.
Awesome, that's really, really
I had one second.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say one thing, because I've tried for years unsuccessfully to get PR people to understand this. You need to you should know the publication you're reaching out to and maybe even down to the reporter and to know, is this the right beat, whatever. You should put yourself in the shoes of a reporter. What is the key to a reporter's heart? A good news tip. Not the press release that you're pitching, but a news tip. So it's fine to pitch press releases, but if you could just tip that reporter off every once in a while on something you see on the street that you think their publication might be into, it's the key to a reporter's heart. And the PR person in this town that figures that out will have a leg up.
All right.
See if that works.
All right, that's some good advice. Okay, and that's a good segue into this next question, Mr. Schwartz. And here's another question for you, and I'm gonna chime in on this as well, is some examples that the media has provided or put forward of good public engagement. I can think of one, obviously our ice cream campaign. That was something that was really positive, but there have been some other really great positive things as well from a Chesterfield County perspective. I think that the media has done a really good job covering our business community. I think that the media has done a good job covering our Experience Chesterfield launch and our Play Chesterfield launch. So those are some examples that I think there's been some good engagement, public engagement between us and the media. But what are some other examples that you all have seen as well?
Of your side of the business being good to us or helping us in some way, or
Absolutely.
us work? Well, I can think of one that's been ongoing right now, and this is Chesterfield related. Maybe it had something to do with this, I don't know. But Jack Jacobs, our reporter who covers Chesterfield, has over the past like 5 or 6 weeks, once a week, had just a sit-down coffee off the record chat with each of the Board of Supervisors members in Chesterfield County. I think you said there's one in the room, so I'm not giving away a secret that you're meeting with a reporter off the record, but it's just pure just get to know you, because there's been a lot of change on the board, and that's the case in Henrico as well. But that's just pure source work. It's not, hey, tell me something right away. Maybe a year from now, the relationship holds up and it becomes important for both sides. But why I bring that up is because Jack, and again, maybe it had something to do with this, but Jack reached out to, and I would have never thought to do this, maybe he's just way more efficient than me. He reached out to someone at the county who basically set up the meetings for him, who communicated with you and your
I told him.
You told him to do that? I just thought that was, we've been talking about this yesterday, I just thought it was a great idea. And our guy who covers Henrico was like, I would have never thought to do that either. So he's gonna try to do the same thing, but that was a way where the county, someone at the county, you clearly thought that's a valuable thing to do, and I'm gonna make it somewhat easy on this reporter. So with one email, basically, he was able to set up 5 meetings with all the supervisors members on different days.
Keyris, we got 2 minutes left, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I'll also give a Chesterfield example, but I was working on a story about a mobile home park revitalization in Chesterfield. And we knew that, y'all are giving money to kind of facilitating the sale, right, for this to happen. But he actually organized and helped us get an interview with the director, who really was vulnerable and transparent and really took the time to explain the facts, how the sale happened. And it really did provide that context that we needed for our story. So I also think that that type of relationship is really important too. Being able to, even if you've been burned before, not to shut us out, because there is a good opportunity for a story. And sometimes we do want to just meet and have a conversation so that we can include those parts. And I think part of it is also just being transparent in our medium and explaining to people, this is a TV story. You might only see 30 seconds of what you're saying. You might not even see a minute. And I think that transparency from us really does help them understand the medium and the form of content.
All right, well,
Can I blow through the stop sign here? 'Cause
very quickly.
we got a lot of Chesterfield. I think Henrico's new sports event center was another great example of a good regional role.
And Richmond had a street sweeper named after a rapper, named after Broom. That was the best.
All right, well, that's gonna do it for the panel discussion. Let's give it up for these folks up here. At this time, we're gonna hand it over to Holly, and we're gonna get into these breakout sessions, so I hope you had your homework with you.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. You'll get a chance to talk to these folks some more, but right now we're going to move into a breakout session. So I'm a big fan of the phrase, "the answers are in the room." I can't take credit for that. I have to give credit to my former boss, John Sarvey at Floricane, for that, because I think we came up with that when I worked there. But there's so much knowledge here, and I want us to use it with each other. So for the next 25 minutes, we're gonna have a breakout session where I would love you to turn to the person next to you and discuss these 3 questions that are on the screen in front of you. Think about some of the ways that you have seen good public engagement happen, share about it. If you've done it, tell. If you've seen something in another state or another locality, share. The second question is, how might you use the media to more creatively engage the public now that you've heard some of this good intel from the panelists? And the third one is, what's inspired you from today? What is something that gave you an aha? And what might you do with that back in your workplace or in your organization? So 3 different questions. You can cover all of them. You can cover one of them. Our panelists are gonna float around the room and chat and kind of pull up and say hi and join you. But I'd love to have some discussion about that for the next 25 minutes. And then we're gonna come back and share a little bit about what we learned and have a small Q&A for the last 10 minutes. And then we'll be done at 2. Sound good? All right, go.
Could never keep up. Now we're out by a great news story happening. We had 8 teams that were
playing on the instrument over there. I think they're ready to move on. And everybody, do we have the panelists come back up? Keyris up here? Oh, there she goes. All right.
Yes.
Okay. So we just had to finish up our breakout sessions. I just wanted to see if there were a couple of people who might want to share something interesting that they may have learned while they were in their breakout session. I'm going to do the best that I can to try to see who is who, because I don't see that well. So anyway, anybody willing to share or talk? All right.
Microphone.
Well, I just want to say kudos.
Your way, Mary here.
Okay.
I just wanted to say kudos to you, and personally, when you sat in our session, we were talking, I'm with BPM, Community Engagement, and we were talking about answer to the first question. We started Racism Challenging Perceptions, which is a panel conversation on TV, radio, and YouTube. 4 years ago, this was our 4th season, and I was telling you about it, and you said, have you ever thought about traveling that conversation to different counties and that you would love to help us? I just think that's a great idea, and I just want to say thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right, here we go. Holly's making the rounds.
Sorry, I didn't see you here.
All right, this is a geography quiz for you guys. What county is west of Henrico, north of Powhatan, and east of Louisa?
Goochland.
All right. Why did we never get coverage?
That's not fair!
I'll let it. I'll take it. What I love about, what we try to make people understand is there are so many counties in Richmond, each one has their own story. The media broadly, we're all up here, we focus so much of our attention on Richmond, which is 300,000 people, and there is so much going on in Richmond City. We got a lot, there's a lot to be said, 240,000, something in that ballpark. But there are more people who don't live in the city of Richmond than do live in the city of Richmond. And I'll shout out BizSense again, because I think they do a good job of covering outlying development, but I think we've been slow to respond broadly to the movement of people and understanding those issues and telling those stories.
Jonathan, what would you like to see covered?
There we go.
That's a good question.
There we go.
I would like to see fair and accurate.
Any specific topics?
Goochland, all things Goochland. Economic development, if you want to look at that. We really are the crown jewel of Central Virginia. And we are just right, we're 27,000. We've got so much happening out there, but we want to grow gracefully. And so it is a challenge for us to also learn from the other districts or other communities here in Central Virginia as to how to do it correctly or as best possible. But no, we are somewhat the red-haired stepchild of Central Virginia. It's like, oh yeah, Goochland, where is that again? So, that's my geography.
No, that's new. No.
All right, so.
No, they get less love than Goochland in the pecking order.
Let's get some more questions here.
They get a bucket.
Holly's coming around.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So we were talking about getting connected to different generations, and what came up that I thought was really interesting was using social media to get connected to people. And I know we talked about Instagram, Facebook, but are any of you connected on TikTok? Because I know TikTok gets a really bad rep usually, but I've started noticing there's a lot of activism on there, a lot of people giving personal stories to the point where people are tagging news outlets. They're like, hey, you need to cover this. And I'm like, I never expected that before. So I wonder if there's been thoughts of going on some places like TikTok, getting a 30-second, minute little tidbits for people, one, that just don't have short attention spans, And then to be like, to get more information, click on this link and there's like, like a link tree or something. I just thought that would be interesting if y'all could address your opinions on that.
I'm gonna jump in first. Per Governor Glenn Youngkin's executive order, no government agency in the state of Virginia can use TikTok.
Interesting, I didn't know that.
Yes. So we, on our social, we use Facebook, we use X, and we have a pop-in Instagram page. I have to give kudos to our social media coordinator, Katie Kaminsky. She does a heck of a job on Instagram for us. We also have a couple of products that are geared towards people with the attention span of a gnat, called Chesterfield News Minute, which is literally a rundown of the news items that are happening in Chesterfield, and it takes 1 minute. So we're working on that. We have a podcast, we have a blog. We're doing everything we can to be as innovative as possible, to reach as many people as possible. I will say one thing that we are working on is definitely trying to make those products more geared towards our bilingual Spanish speakers and other speakers in our county. But those are just some examples that we're doing besides TikTok, because we can't do it, so.
I'll speak for myself, but I think at BPM there is an effort to be on Instagram, be on TikTok, and YouTube Shorts. So that 1 minute of content. We also create a BPM news update every week that's 80 seconds. You have to just write it 80 seconds, but basically that's a way to get out the 3 most important stories of the week. And then on the personal level, I think some of our reporters have also taken it upon themselves to be on Instagram and really kind of cover their beat. There's a reporter on our team named Jad Khalil who runs a really nice Instagram, very traditional in the TikTok sense, right? The person speaking and the news stories like behind them. So there are efforts, I think, to expand that. I'll give away my age, but I am Gen Z. And so I love TikTok and Instagram and Twitter. So I think it's definitely important for us to be shifting our coverage and finding ways to package our content for those platforms.
Since you mentioned it earlier, you mentioned WhatsApp earlier, just the
Yes.
importance of being where those
They are,
populations are, because the Hispanic population, that's where they are. Yeah.
And if you'd like to follow PlanRVA on social media, we are at PlanRVA on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram.
Awesome. All right, it is 1:56. I think we might have one more, time for maybe one more question.
Hi y'all, I'm not in PR, so this is an interesting panel just as a person who lives in Richmond and is interested in Richmond city things. Kelsey and I'm Shannon, by the way. We both work for companies doing placemaking, sustainable, smart city design, that type of work, not just in Richmond, but other places around the US and the world. We're both talking about how AI, obviously ChatGPT late last year, huge now in our realm of work, I think, for stuff that we're doing. How is that at all, if yes, I'm sure it must be impacting your newsrooms, how reporting is getting done, or just, what you're seeing out in the world around Richmond?
I taught a journalism class at VCU last semester, and I told them, I may not be able to tell that ChatGPT wrote this, I'll just know it's bad. If you're a journalist who's getting replaced by ChatGPT, you're not doing your job right. You're not in the room, you're not in the meeting, you're not asking questions. Part of this is, there will be a weeding out of people who are just watching a feed, transcribing it, and summarizing it, because AI can do that, and AI can do that freakishly well and gets better at it every day. I have yet to see an AI that can make a phone call, have a conversation with somebody and get new information out of them and contextualize that against past information. So I think it's really gonna divide who's doing their job against who's not doing their job. Because if you see a story and you're like, AI could have written this, it probably will soon, and you'll probably be out of a job because of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. We just had this conversation in our newsroom a couple weeks ago. If you're doing your job right as a local journalist, AI can't replace what we do day to day. They could help us, it could help a day. Whatever it's gonna be, it can help us dig through documents and scour. And the reason I'll say it briefly because I know we gotta go. It came up in our newsroom because I was doing a story that was a fairly complicated story requiring me to dig through a bunch of really old Securities and Exchange Commission filings. It was taking me forever, and I'm like, God, and I just needed like a couple, I knew what I needed, I just had to find it. And I was like, I'll see what ChatGPT, and I never even used the thing before, and the only reason I even thought to use it is because I'm on my laptop, my work laptop, it was the new version of Windows, and the little thing popped up in the corner saying, try Microsoft Copilot. I'm like, what the hell is that? So I tried it, and I typed in, write me a news article about the topic that I was doing. I wanted to see what would happen. And what it regurgitated within, now granted, it happened within seconds, was everything I had already been scouring on my own. So it just found it that much faster. But it can't write an article, and it can't give that human context yet. I'm sure someday it could get closer and closer. But ultimately, that story still needed me to talk to humans, and that's where it comes in. So I was talking about this with our guys. I said, you don't need to be afraid of this, because if you're doing your job right, it can't replace it.
I do think it's concerning that a lot of bigger outlets are finding ways to partner or use like Vox, New York Times, right? And now we have that summary, like you can just summarize the entire article. So I think it just like defeats the purpose of what we do.
So that's an excellent segue into a theme I heard the whole day, which is relationships matter. You all are here doing it. Thank you for being here because you're talking to each other, the panelists. I have just a small gift of appreciation to each of you on behalf of PlanRVA for being here. Thank you all so much. You get one too, yes. Can we have a round of applause for our meeting? Thank you all so much. So if you have signed up for the rest of the day, get ready, more exciting things coming, more relationships happening. We're gonna take a 15-minute break and then we'll reconvene back here at 2:15 for data-driven decision-making. Thank you.
RVA's got issues. I heard cars, transportation. Yeah.